Hi everybody, it's Honest John again. I probably don't think very much about this, but it's kind of a miracle that this country and even the world exists as it does today. I grew up at the peak of the Cold War, and the world was on the verge of nuclear war, not just once, several times. Everybody thinks about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that we did come very close to nuclear war during that episode. But there are other incidents that are less well known. Radar at the time was much less sophisticated and well developed than it is now. And there were a couple of incidents where phantom blips appeared on our radar screens that looked like Russia had launched their nuclear missiles. Fortunately, the blips disappeared before we could launch ours. And it was after one of these incidents that the red phone was developed and placed in the White House and Moscow so that our president and the Russian leader could have a direct line of communication. There were also several incidents in Europe. The Berlin airlift, for example, is one. You can Google that, find out what happened. Basically, they blocked off access to Berlin, which, even though Berlin was divided up between East Berlin and West Berlin, it was actually, West Berlin was actually in East Germany, and they blocked off access to it, so we had to airlift their supplies to them until that could be negotiated into a settlement. And there were other incidents in between Western Europe and Eastern Europe that escalated the tensions. But fortunately, in all of these cases, cooler heads prevailed. If nuclear war had started, it would have decimated both the United States and Russia. And there would be have been a good chance that it would have spread to Europe and possibly China as well. So the world would be a much different place today if that had happened. Not only would a lot of countries have had to completely rebuild themselves and rebuild their societies, but there would be places that would still be uninhabitable today because of the radiation from nuclear fallout. And many of those places are major population centers. Imagine a world where New York, Washington, Los Angeles, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Beijing, Berlin, Paris, and London are not population centers, but are huge radioactive wastelands where nobody can live. Now, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions, probably millions of people would have died initially in the nuclear war. And then as the years went by, even more people would have died from the effects of radiation. And babies all over the world would have been born with monstrous birth defects. That's the world that could have been. But none of that happened because we and the Russians had leaders who did not allow these crises to escalate to a nuclear conflagration. Now imagine if the United States had had a leader like Donald Trump during the Cold War. Rash, vain, impulsive, ego-driven, erratic, impetuous, and with the morals of an alley cat. And though we escaped nuclear war back then, that is the kind of leader that we have today. Thanks for listening.